According to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, by March 2024, Russia's Black Sea Fleet had become functionally inactive, decimated by a country that doesn't even have a navy. Ukraine, with no destroyers, no cruisers, no frigates, managed to sink or damage over 1/3 of Russia's prestigious Black Sea Fleet, forcing the entire armada to abandon its historic base in Crimea. Among the losses, the fleet's flagship, a missile cruiser worth hundreds of millions, sunk by a nation using drones that cost less than $250,000 each. How is this possible? How does a country without warships defeat one of the world's most storied naval forces? Let's take a closer look at the most remarkable naval campaign of the 21st century, a David versus Goliath story written in the waters of the Black Sea. I'm Nora Blake, and here on Nora Blake, we explore the strategies, technologies, and human ingenuity that reshape modern warfare. But before we dive into this extraordinary story, as you value detailed military analysis and untold stories from the front lines, hit that like button, subscribe to Nora Blake, and turn on notifications so you never miss our coverage of conflicts that are changing the rules of war. On paper, the situation defies logic. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, the Black Sea Fleet boasted 74 warships, missile cruisers, submarines, landing ships capable of amphibious assaults, a force designed to dominate the sea and support ground operations along Ukraine's coast. Sevastopol, the fleet's headquarters since 1783, bristled with naval power that had projected Russian might for over 2 centuries. Ukraine, by contrast, possessed virtually nothing. 75% of its naval vessels had been captured when Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. The remainder was a handful of patrol boats and support craft, nothing that could challenge a modern fleet. No anti-ship capabilities worth mentioning, no destroyers to intercept Russian warships bombarding coastal cities, no submarines to hunt the enemy beneath the waves. Given these facts, Russia should have commanded the Black Sea entirely, blockading Ukrainian ports, landing troops at will, and using the sea as a highway for resupply. Yet by mid-2024, Russian warships had fled Crimea, retreating hundreds of kilometers to Novorossiysk. The flagship Moskva rested on the seabed. Multiple submarines were destroyed or disabled. Landing ships that should have been ferrying troops and equipment to Ukrainian shores instead lay broken in ports or sunk in open water. To understand the significance of this defeat, we must recognize what the Black Sea Fleet represents to Russia. Founded by Prince Potemkin alongside the city of Sevastopol on May 13, 1783, the fleet embodied Russian imperial ambitions. Legendary admirals like Dmitry Senyavin and Pavel Nakhimov commanded these waters. During the Crimean War, Russian sailors scuttled their own ships to block Sevastopol harbor, rather than surrender the city to British and French forces, a sacrifice that entered Russian mythology as heroic defiance. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the fleet was partitioned, with Russia receiving 82% of the vessels. Moscow leased bases in Sevastopol from Ukraine, but the arrangement chafed. Russian nationalists viewed the lease as humiliating, a reminder that Crimea had slipped from their grasp. In 2010, Ukraine's parliament erupted into physical blows when the pro-Russian president extended Russia's naval lease, a scene that foreshadowed the violence to come. Then came 2014. As Ukraine's Maidan revolution toppled the pro-Russian government, unmarked Russian special forces seized Crimea in a lightning operation. 75% of Ukraine's navy was captured in port. The Black Sea Fleet reclaimed its ancestral home without firing a shot. Putin had restored what Russians considered the natural order. Sevastopol under the Russian tricolor, the fleet supreme once more. But Ukraine had not been idle during those 8 years. While Russia celebrated its Crimean conquest, Ukrainian engineers worked on a secret weapon. The R-360 Neptune anti-ship missile, based on old Soviet designs, but modernized with Ukrainian technology, entered service in 2021. Land-based launchers could deploy along the coast, firing missiles with a range exceeding 280 kilometers. Few observers paid much attention. What good was one missile system against an entire fleet? Everything changed on April 13th, 2022. The missile cruiser Moskva, flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, was steaming south of Odessa, far beyond where Ukrainian forces should have been able to strike. The ship itself was a symbol of Russian naval power, a Slava-class cruiser commissioned in 1982, bristling with anti-ship and anti-aircraft weapons. Just days earlier, the Moskva had achieved infamy during the siege of Snake Island, when Ukrainian border guards responded to surrender demands with the now legendary phrase, "Russian warship, go f-." Ukrainian Neptune crews detected a large radar signature that afternoon. Scientists would later discover that unusual atmospheric conditions, a temperature inversion over the Black Sea, had bent radar waves beyond the horizon, allowing detection at impossible ranges. 2 Neptune missiles streaked toward the target. They struck during what Russian sailors call the Admiral's Hour, that quiet afternoon period when vigilance dips. One missile punched through the ship's mess hall, the largest compartment aboard, located directly above the forward engine room and near the damage control stations. The explosion was catastrophic. Ammunition from the ship's close-in weapon systems detonated in a chain reaction. Fire spread rapidly through passages and compartments. The Russian crew, many of them conscripts rather than trained professionals, struggled to contain the blaze. Damage control procedures, neglected during years of corruption and complacency, failed utterly. Throughout the night, the Moskva burned. Russian vessels attempted rescue operations, but a storm had blown in, complicating efforts. By dawn on April 14th, the pride of the Black Sea Fleet slipped beneath the waves while under tow to port. Russia initially claimed a fire had caused the sinking, refusing to acknowledge Ukrainian missiles. Only later would Moscow admit what the world already knew. The casualties remain disputed to this day. Russia claimed 396 crew members were rescued, with 1 dead and 27 missing. Ukraine countered that only 58 survivors were pulled from the sea, out of a complement of 510. A Moscow court, more than 2 years later in January 2026, would confirm that at least 20 sailors died, with 24 injured and 8 still missing. Ukraine understood immediately that the Neptune system alone could not dominate the Black Sea. Missiles were expensive, their launchers vulnerable to Russian strikes. What Ukraine needed was a weapon that could be produced in quantity, operated remotely, and risked no human lives. The answer came not from defense contractors, but from Ukrainian engineers, Navy specialists, and even private companies pooling their expertise. In July 2022, the first prototypes emerged, rudimentary unmanned surface vessels equipped with cameras and explosive payloads. The Security Service of Ukraine developed the Sea Baby, a 6-meter drone powered by dual inboard motors and capable of carrying up to 850 kilograms of explosives. The main intelligence directorate took a different approach with the Magura V5, a smaller, more maneuverable craft designed to hunt warships at sea. Both designs shared critical features. Starlink satellite terminals provided control links nearly impossible to jam. GPS guidance allowed autonomous navigation to target areas, with human operators taking control for the final attack run. Low radar profiles made them difficult to detect until the last moments. And most importantly, they were cheap, around $250,000 per unit. A single Ukrainian drone could sink a Russian warship worth tens of millions. The attacks began in earnest throughout 2023. Ukrainian drones struck the intelligence ship Ivan Hers, hundreds of kilometers from shore in May. demonstrating their operational range. In August, the landing ship Olenogorsky Gornyak was damaged near Novorossiysk, proving even Russian ports weren't safe. September brought a devastating strike on the Sevastopol dry dock, where Storm Shadow missiles destroyed the landing ship Minsk and damaged the Kilo-class submarine Rostov-on-Don beyond economic repair. But the raid that truly shook the Russian Navy came on September 22, 2023. Storm Shadow missiles provided by Britain and France slammed into the Black Sea Fleet headquarters in Sevastopol. The building housed senior commanders overseeing the entire naval campaign. Ukrainian intelligence claimed 33 officers were killed, though Russia never confirmed the toll. For days, speculation swirled about whether the fleet commander himself had died in the strike, until he appeared in Russian propaganda footage. Whether the man shown was actually alive, or Russia was using older footage to save face, remains an open question. The psychological impact was profound. If Russia couldn't protect its own headquarters in occupied Crimea, what could it protect? The answer became clear in the months that followed. The night of January 31st to February 1st, 2024, marked a turning point in naval warfare. A swarm of Magura V5 drones converged on the Tarantula-class corvette Ivanovets near Lake Donuslav in western Crimea. Video released by Ukrainian intelligence shows the coordinated assault, multiple drones approaching from different angles, overwhelming the ship's defenses. Explosions rippled across the hull as drone after drone detonated against the warship. Within minutes, the Ivanovets was sinking. This was the first time in history that naval drones had sunk a warship in combat. Not damaged, not disabled, sunk. The Ivanovets, a $60 to $70 million missile corvette, was sent to the bottom by drones costing less than $1 million total. The asymmetric advantage was staggering. 2 weeks later, the pattern repeated. The Ropucha-class landing ship Cesar Kunikov, transporting military cargo between Russian bases, was intercepted by a Magura V5 flotilla. These landing ships, with cargo capacities of 450 tons and specialized for beach assaults, were critical to Russia's invasion plans. The Kunikov joined the Ivanovets on the seabed. Then came March 5th. The patrol ship Sergei Kotov, which had survived multiple previous drone attacks, finally succumbed near the Kerch Strait. Magura V5 struck the stern repeatedly until the vessel sank. Russian commanders faced an impossible choice. Sevastopol, the crown jewel of the Black Sea Fleet for 2.5 centuries, had become a death trap. Drones struck ships at anchor. Missiles hit repair facilities. Even the fleet headquarters wasn't safe. Satellites tracked the gradual withdrawal. Major combatants, submarines, landing ships, all departing Crimean waters for the relative safety of Novorossiysk, 300 kilometers to the east. By mid-July 2024, the exodus was complete. The last significant warships departed Sevastopol. Russian officials maintained public silence, but in October, Senator Dmitry Rogozin became the first Kremlin figure to admit what satellite images had already revealed. Ukrainian attacks had indeed forced the Black Sea Fleet to abandon its historic base. It was an acknowledgement of humiliation, a retreat that contradicted every narrative about Russian military supremacy and the permanence of the Crimean occupation. The British Ministry of Defense declared the Black Sea Fleet functionally inactive. Ukrainian Navy spokesman Dmytro Pletenchuk confirmed that by June 2024, at least 42 effective attacks had struck Russian vessels. 22 ships and boats were destroyed outright. 20 more suffered damage, some beyond repair. That represented approximately 1/3 of Russia's entire Black Sea force. All this accomplished by a nation that entered the war with essentially no navy. Russia didn't sit idle during this maritime humiliation. Defensive measures proliferated around Crimea's bridges and ports. Sunken barges were positioned around pylons to block drone approaches. Gunboats patrolled likely attack routes. Electronic warfare systems attempted to jam GPS and Starlink signals. Helicopters armed with machine guns hunted for surface drones. The entire defensive posture shifted from projecting power to desperately protecting infrastructure. Ukraine responded by evolving its drones. The Sea Baby 2024 variant boasted an extended range of 1,500 kilometers and could carry up to 2,000 kilograms of payload. But the most dramatic evolution came in weaponry. Instead of mere explosive payloads, Ukrainian engineers began arming drones themselves. Machine gun-equipped Sea Babies engaged Russian patrol boats and even helicopters in December 2024, trading fire in a bizarre dance of remote-controlled warfare. The Magura V7, introduced in 2025, represented the ultimate expression of this evolution. At 24 feet long and displacing up to 3.7 tons fully loaded, it was more than twice the size of the V5. But size wasn't the revolutionary feature. Armament was. The V7 carried air-to-air missiles on launch rails, AIM-9 sidewinders, R-73 heat seekers, weapons designed to shoot down aircraft. On December 31st, 2024, a Magura V5, equipped with R-73 missiles, detected a Russian Mi-8 helicopter near Cape Tarkhankut in western Crimea. The drone fired. The helicopter exploded in midair, tumbling into the sea. It was the first time in military history that a surface drone had shot down an aircraft. A second helicopter, also engaged, managed to escape by deploying flares and returning to base. But that record lasted only until May 2nd, 2025. 50 kilometers west of Novorossiysk, Magura V7 drones detected 2 Russian Su-30SM fighter jets on patrol. These were $50 million multi-role fighters, the backbone of Russian tactical aviation. The drones fired Sidewinder missiles. Both jets were hit. The first crew ejected and was recovered by a civilian ship. The second crew died in the crash. The implications were staggering. A maritime drone had defeated fighter aircraft in air-to-air combat. The psychological impact on Russian pilots must have been profound. The humiliation of being hunted by robotic boats lurking in the waves below. Every sortie over the Black Sea now carried a new dimension of threat, one for which their training and tactics had never prepared them. Ukrainian engineers pushed the concept further still. If surface drones could attack ships and even aircraft, why not create drones that operated entirely underwater? The Sea Baby, a fully submerged variant, began development. Unlike traditional torpedoes that ran on preset courses, this was a remotely operated underwater vehicle capable of extended missions. On December 15th, 2025, the Sea Baby proved its worth. Video released by the Security Service of Ukraine showed a Kilo-class submarine berthed at Novorossiysk, Russia's supposedly secure fallback base, far from the Ukrainian coast. An explosion erupted against the submarine's hull. Ukrainian officials claimed the vessel was B-271 Kolpino, a Project 636.3 improved Kilo equipped with Caliber cruise missiles. The UK Ministry of Defence assessed the strike as highly likely successful. This was another historical first, the world's first submarine attacked by an underwater unmanned vehicle in combat. The technology that had seemed like science fiction just 3 years earlier was now operational reality. Even Novorossiysk, on Russian sovereign territory, heavily fortified and 300 kilometers from Ukrainian-controlled shores, was now within striking range. Russia's geographic adaptation had failed. The naval campaign's effects rippled far beyond sunken ships and damaged submarines. When Russia invaded in February 2022, one of its primary objectives was strangling Ukraine's economy by blockading Black Sea ports. Ukraine, known as the breadbasket of Europe, normally exported 6 million tons of grain monthly. The blockade threatened global food supplies and denied Kyiv crucial revenue. The destruction of the Black Sea Fleet reversed this calculus entirely. By mid-2023, Ukraine had established a new maritime corridor for commercial shipping. Russian warships, cowed by drone and missile attacks, no longer dared operate close enough to Ukrainian ports to enforce an effective blockade. Grain exports resumed, reaching near pre-war levels by 2024. Ships passed through Ukrainian territorial waters, not because of Ukraine's naval power, but because of Russia's naval impotence. The campaign also freed Ukraine from the threat of amphibious assault. Russia had lost 7 of its 13 large landing ships, the vessels designed to deliver tanks, armored vehicles, and troops directly to hostile beaches. The survivors cowered in Novorossiysk, too valuable and too vulnerable to risk. Dreams of landing forces at Odessa or behind Ukrainian lines evaporated. The Black Sea, once a Russian lake, had become contested water, where Ukrainian drones hunted with impunity. Behind every drone strike lay Ukrainian ingenuity and determination. The United 24 crowdfunding platform allowed citizens worldwide to contribute directly to drone production. In February 2024 alone, nearly 300 million hryvnias, approximately $7.5 million, were raised for 35 Sea Baby 2024 units. Each drone received a name, like the Avdiivka, commemorating the destroyed Ukrainian city and serving as both memorial and warning. Operators worked from mobile control centers, vans equipped with banks of screens and controls. These teams guided drones across hundreds of kilometers of open water, maintaining satellite links through storms and electronic warfare, maneuvering into attack positions while Russian defenders scrambled to respond. The operators went by call signs rather than real names: Scout, Hunter, operating from undisclosed locations to preserve operational security. Their cohesion and skill determined mission success. But the campaign came at a cost. In March 2024, a Russian ballistic missile struck a hangar near Odessa moments after President Zelensky had been present for an awards ceremony honoring naval drone personnel. Many were killed. Whether Russia was targeting Zelensky himself or the drone program infrastructure remains unclear, but the effect was immediate. Drone attacks decreased significantly in frequency after that strike, suggesting critical personnel and equipment were lost. While numerous nations have provided weapons and support to Ukraine throughout this war, the naval campaign against Russia's Black Sea Fleet stands apart as a uniquely Ukrainian achievement. No other country gave Ukraine the drones that sank the Ivanovets or shot down those Su-30 fighters. Western partners provided Storm Shadow missiles and intelligence support, certainly, but the core weapon systems, Neptune, Magura, Sea Baby, were Ukrainian innovations, built and operated by Ukrainian engineers and warriors. Perhaps most remarkably, Ukraine accomplished this despite being dramatically outmatched in conventional naval power. The Black Sea Fleet, even diminished, still possesses submarines and surface combatants. But Ukraine's asymmetric approach, combining domestically produced drones, crowd-funded procurement, and audacious tactical execution, has neutralized that advantage. A $250,000 drone can sink a $60 million warship. A submarine costing hundreds of millions can be disabled by an underwater robot controlled from a van hundreds of kilometers away. This may be what infuriates Putin most. Raw military power cannot counter Ukrainian ingenuity. The conventional playbook, intimidation, overwhelming force, territorial occupation, fails against an enemy that refuses to fight conventionally. Russia cannot bomb the drone production facilities when they're dispersed and mobile. It cannot intercept every Starlink-guided attack when launches can come from anywhere along the coast. It cannot protect every ship, submarine, and port from weapons that cost less than the ammunition expended trying to stop them. As long as Ukraine maintains access to the Black Sea coast, as long as engineers continue innovating and operators continue launching missions, the Black Sea Fleet will remain crippled, unable to fully secure even its own fallback bases in Russian territory. History's most successful naval campaign without a navy continues to unfold, rewriting the rules of maritime warfare. For more analysis of how modern technology is transforming warfare, check out our previous video on Ukrainian drone innovations. And if you want to follow the latest developments in this unprecedented conflict, make sure you're subscribed to Nora Blake with notifications on. Let us know in the comments what aspect of Ukraine's naval campaign surprises you most. Thanks for watching, and remember, the most dangerous opponents aren't always the ones with the biggest fleets.